Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. This is episode number 4 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. My name is Sean Rossler, your host, your guide, your interviewer, whatever you want to call me. With me today, we have one of the greatest local icons I've had the honor to meet locally in Chef Gary Vadakin. Bucks County born and raised, he got a start in the Epicurean realm, clearing tables at an early age for his grandfather and dining on his father's soups and stews, which were, to say the least, legendary. He officially got a start in the restaurant business at 16, putting his hand on every role and every task he could out of pure love of the business. Once he realized food as art was in his blood, and it is, trust me, I've been there, I've seen it, he formally turned chef and has worked in some of the most amazing establishments in Philadelphia, New York, and Miami. Fast forward a little bit, and Chef finally realized his dream of owning his own, opening Seasons on Main right here in my near and dear Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. He's a generous host with an eye to detail like no other I've ever witnessed. To dine with at Seasons is to dine with family. Ladies and gentlemen, Chef Gary Vadakin. Chef, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sean. Wow, what an introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Like to make sure everyone's adequately introduced. So, Chef, to give you an idea, we're going to go through 3 sections of questions: starters, where you came from; mains, where you're at; and afters, a little bit of everything else. So, without further ado, Gary, I'd love to know, where did you grow up eating? What was your environment where you grew up around food?
Well, I was born and raised in Bucks County, which is north of Philadelphia, about 40 minutes north of Philly. So I was a suburb boy, I guess you can call me, but we were close to the country. So as a child, we were able to dine country, fresh, but also take a short trip into the city and dine metro, I guess you would call it. So I was one of 4 kids, and my parents made sure that we kind of got to know what food was about at an early age. My grandfather had a diner when I was a kid. My dad was kind of a cook in the Navy and liked to cook himself. So the men in my family were better cooks than the women. Don't tell my mom that, please. But and I think that was the introduction to the art of food for me, was that it was, for the men at least, not a chore. It was an art. So as a youngster, we would, once a month, would go into the city of Philadelphia to maybe dine at a wonderful hotel or a nice restaurant. So that was kind of my start as a child of loving food. And I started as at front of the house. I worked at a McDonald's, my first restaurant. Most youngsters do. Back in the day when we didn't even have in-house dining at McDonald's, it was just a drive-through kind of thing, parking. And an owner of a restaurant, an Italian restaurant, Mr. Bob Alvino, spotted something in me. I don't know. I was a people person, so maybe that was it, and offered me a busboy job at the age of 15. And that's how I started working in restaurants at 15. Worked my way up from busboy to waiter to maitre d'. And the back of the house wasn't even part of my plan. It was working service, hospitality. So I basically was happy with that and worked my way up. But in my mid-30s or early 30s, I would say I was an artist at heart. I always loved art all through my adult years. And in my mid-30s, I realized maybe I need to be in the kitchen rather than out front where they create the food. And I started that way. It's basically,
That's an awesome story from start to finish. So really growing up, Gary, it sounds like you literally had the best of both worlds. Like John, our producer for the show, and I grew up in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, which I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It would be shocking if you did. But it's certainly small. You can blink and you can miss it. And so we didn't necessarily have a best of both worlds. We were a country town. Sounds to me like you had a nice split between the two.
I did. That's what I think was very special about living in Bucks County, is that you are near New York. I'm only an hour and 20 minutes from New York. So you were near large cities, but still had, cows in the backyard of my neighbors. And I still had that country feeling. So it was kind of nice. I like that.
Right on, right on. And you mentioned your first true restaurant gig was as a busboy.
Right.
What was it that you saw when you were even bussing tables? And having bus tables myself, I know that you can see some really cool things. Like, do you have any memories of like things in the restaurant scene when even you were just bussing tables that made you realize food was important?
Let me go back even further than that. When I was a youngster of 8 or 9, like I said, my grandfather had a little diner in Northeast Philadelphia. I can remember once in a while, like my grandfather would have to babysit me. I was the oldest of 4 kids, and so I can remember going to that little diner and seeing my grandfather so happy in a white apron and a hat, and he usually had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, but very happy at what he was doing. There were friends coming in, regulars, I guess you would call them, every morning, and he was happy to see them, and they were happy to see him. It was a joy to watch the joy on his face as a kid. And even though I was just maybe pouring water or clearing tables just to help him out, I could see the love that he was, portraying doing that. So that was the start. And then my dad, being in the Navy for about 5 years and was helping cook in the Navy, once he got out of the Navy and got married to my mom and had us 4 kids, like I said, every other Sunday, he would have the kitchen for himself, and he would go in the kitchen with like an old frilly apron that my mom might have had around, and he'd have a ball in the kitchen making a stew or soup. He'd have a beer maybe, and he'd be whistling, and it was a joy to watch him create in the kitchen. So that might have been the very start of my love for food, was that it was a joy to be in the kitchen doing that and creating. So once I got the busboy job, I realized there were a lot more aspects to the restaurant than just being in the kitchen. It was more about pleasing people. So that is where the start of my people skills, I think, came. It was as a busboy, watching these wonderful, it was an elegant Italian restaurant where you had the servers had bow ties on. It was really fancy. And I saw the love of people through the restaurant. And I think that's where my people skills. So I was a shy kid. I wasn't a very outgoing kid. And that's where I kind of honed in with that I could possibly work on that, being shy, working with people. So starting as a busboy was a whole new thing.
I can certainly think of another establishment locally where the appearance is formal, but the feeling is very home and very comforting. But we'll get to that in just a minute. I don't want to name names, seasons I'm in.
Thank you.
But to bring it back to food a little bit, Gary, do you remember when you were growing up, what kind of an eater were you? Were you adventurous? Were you picky?
Yes, I was the least picky eater. I loved anything and everything about food. I had siblings that were the opposite. So if they didn't want to eat something, I would. Nice. I was a very good eater, and luckily I've never had to worry about my weight or health. I've been very fortunate with that, but I've always loved food because it was an art. And I just think, why not try something? I mean, there's so many strange looking foods out there that people love to eat, and what, maybe triggered them to like it. It might have been trying it. If they didn't try something, chocolate ice cream or something, they might not like it because of the way it looks. But yeah, I try everything. It was very good.
Awesome.
And like I said, my parents had given us the adventures of going to, Asian restaurants, Thai restaurants when we were young. I can remember going to the Ben Franklin Hotel in Philadelphia. Once in a while, we would go down, and where they originally had a tin roof at that hotel in the lobby, and that started my love for tin roofs. But I can remember seeing escargot for the first time, and oysters, and really strange foods that we did not maybe get to see in Bucks County. But there was my introduction to a strange type of food. So at an early age.
Sure.
So I tried
now, thinking back to that early age, are there any childhood foods that you think of and you miss with almost a pain? Like, it could be something a relative made or something that was a tradition, but can you think of a food or foods that like makes you almost well up in your heart thinking about it because you miss it so much?
I think that's one of the keys to being a good chef, is to try to bring back some of those memories for people. I think food is an association with your childhood. tell you the truth. That's how I feel it is. I think a lot of people's favorite foods go way back to something their grandmother or their mother made, or something that was comforting to them. I know it is for me. I know my mom had a couple special recipes that I love. When I just think about it, I get a smile because of those wonderful days of when we would sit around a table as a family and dine on this great dish. So as a chef, you try to make items that not only I remember as a child, but hopefully other people will remember or think of as a child. I also think that if some of your dislikes in food come from your childhood, I know I call it a stomach scar. If you eat something that might not have been prepared properly, or maybe was bad, or something that wasn't edible, and you eat it as a child and you get sick or you hate it, that will stay with you forever. For me, it's tequila. I remember 16 trying tequila and got sick. There's always something that someone can't even think of without, gagging a little bit. But I think it comes from when you're a child, you're younger.
I absolutely have to share this story with you. And again, I hope your mom doesn't listen to this, and I hope my mom doesn't, because I'm about to kind of bust record a little bit. When my wife and I were to your establishment recently, not for our 10-year anniversary, but after that, it was the winter menu, and you had a Brussels sprout side. My mother, growing up, would literally, baptize Brussels sprouts. In other words, she would boil the living hell out of them.
Yes.
And I hated them. I'm not going to lie. Dad, if you're listening, don't tell Mom I said this, but I hated them.
Same way.
When we had them the other night at your place, that stomach scar healed perfectly. You put Dermabond on my stomach, and I have since tried to recreate it now twice. So when you mentioned the stomach scars, my mind immediately goes to your Brussels sprouts versus my mother's. Sorry, Mom, don't kill me. Don't leave me out of the will, please.
You're one of dozens of people that I've turned into Brussels sprout lovers because of that. And you're exactly right. I was the same way. I hated my mom's Brussels sprouts. She would boil them for an hour, like you said, whole, and the entire house smelled like stinking cabbage. And I never liked them until I was an adult and tried them differently. And the way I make them is my idea. I've never had them like that. But I thought that was a vegetable that most people despise, and I thought maybe I could make them with adding garlic and bacon. Maybe I can make them more likable, and they are one of our more popular vegetables. So thank you. Yeah. That worked.
Listen, garlic and bacon on a shoe will entice me to at least try a bite of the shoe. So, it made Brussels sprouts legendary. So thank you for turning that stomach scar around. When you mentioned growing up that, bussing tables was your first gig in a restaurant, but can you remember a specific point where you thought to yourself, food is what I want to do with my life, period. No questions. Like that there was a moment, or was it a group of moments?
Well, no, the food wasn't the first aha moment for me. What I saw, like in my dad and my grandfather, was a joy of working with people and doing something that seemed like a hobby to them, that they were preparing something and creating. I don't remember either of them ever looking at a recipe book. It was kind of creating through their head artistically, is what I thought. And then I saw the joy as they served it to my family or friends, whoever it was. And I saw that. And that's what I kind of was hooked on, was that people thing. So as the start as a busboy was the intro to a hospitality. That's what I really loved, was the hospitality part of it. Wasn't about the art of food. I didn't quite get that, like I said, until like my early 30s. And it was all about, I worked for Ritz-Carlton. I've gone all the way as far as I could in hospitality. I did everything I could, and I loved it. But there was something that was kind of missing in my heart, and I've always was an artist. So I think in my, like I said, early 30s, something hit me. In fact, I can tell you the exact moment that it happened. I was working at a beautiful country club down in Florida, and Chef Robin Haas, a wonderful chef, well known in South Florida, his sous chef was named Todd Weiss, who is now a very good chef in South Florida. I was the general manager of the restaurant, and the chef and sous chef were running the kitchen. Todd Weiss went off to a skiing trip one winter, and fell and broke both arms and one ankle during the wintertime, which was a very busy time in South Florida. So he came back to the hotel, and everyone was in a tizzy because here's the sous chef who does a lot of the prep work for the chef with two arms in a cast, and what were we going to do? I thought, here's a perfect opportunity to not only learn from a great chef, but also to help the restaurant out. So I had an assistant manager who took over the restaurant with my eyes also. And I jumped into the sous chef's position, put on the white coat, and pretty much was a free education by Chef Robin Haas. And for, I guess, 6 to 8 weeks, I was the sous chef robot, I called it, because Todd Weiss was there in a cast, but told me what I needed to do and how to do it, how to work knives and so I had a big education in the kitchen. And that might have been the start of the food love, because I saw a whole different side of that curtain of the restaurant, the back of the curtain that I wasn't a part of. I saw the joy there and the creativity. So that started it. And most people would have gone right to a college, cooking culinary college. Yeah. I, at the time, didn't want to do that. I thought, I'm going to teach myself. So I'm a self-taught chef. I know people argue that because I have the word chef in my introduction, that I should have had some sort of degree to go with it. But I am going to be 58, and I've been in this business since I was 16. Put me up against any culinary grad, and let's see who wins. I think my experience of the places I've worked, my passion and my love for this business has taught me more than any school could. That's how I look at it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would fight almost demonically to defend your title on that, having dined and having seen, because I think one point you bring up, you had hospitality first and then food second. I think if there's anything missing, and my wife and I talk about this anytime we're in a restaurant, that it's the service that truly enhances the flavor. And it's almost like a teacher learning to teach first and then studying English, history, whatever. I think you need to inherently understand what it is you're doing before you do the other stuff surrounding it. And not that food is surrounding in a restaurant, but I think too often that aspect of it is overlooked. And I think that's why I'm not trying to fanboy here. I'm not trying to do anything like that. But I mean, honestly, the experience at Seasons is truly home with a bow tie. I mean, just really elevated, but comfortable. Like, I feel like I could take my shoes off. I wouldn't. Yes. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't take them off, but I feel like that comfortable. And I think there's so much merit to that. And so I think it's good to see somebody who's not hanging their hat on, well, I went to school. I think practical experience moves mountains in the food industry.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
Absolutely.
It's about passion. It's not about money, fame, or having your name somewhere on a restaurant sign. It's about the passion for the business. In any business, it should be about that. But more so in this, because it has to come from your heart. I mean, let me also say, I am competing with the most personal thing of anyone's home is their own kitchen, their own dining room, their own chef, or not chef, their own wife, or whoever's cooking in the home. That's what you're competing with. That's really hard to do. So you want it to be an experience beyond something that they can get at home. Everyone can sit on their sofa and have a plate of food and have a great meal. But to come out to a restaurant, you expect that plus more. You expect the entire experience to be beyond what you could get at home. Or why would you even want to go out to eat? And most restaurateurs don't understand that. I think I say it's like a house of cards, a restaurant. Every card has to be strong to support the entire experience. Great food, great service. It could be a dirty, restroom. It could be extra bright lighting or the wrong temperature in a restaurant could turn you off. You might not even know it. You might just subconsciously say, "Oh, I don't like it here." So every detail has to be the best it can be. So that's what I try to do.
I couldn't agree more. Moving on to
elegant yet comfortable. Yeah, elegant yet comfortable is like my tagline. That's what I want. I want elegant.
It's your tagline, and you do it well.
I mean, I'm in a vest. I don't know if you can see me. I'm in a vest, but I have jeans on. We wear blue jeans here all the time. I don't want it to be really elegant. So.
Right on. Awesome. Okay. So moving from who Gary was coming up to who Gary is now, where would you say you draw your culinary inspiration from the most? Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a thing?
Well, it's funny, the media, how it's changed in my life. When I was a child, there were no cooking. Well, there was a cooking show, Julia Child and the Galloping Gourmet were the only two. I think they were on PBS on Sunday mornings or something, were the only two television cooking shows you could see. There was no internet when I was a child. There was no other way to look into a recipe unless going to a library or opening up a book and finding out, reading on how to cook. So it was really tough. Now, it's in your face every day. And I kind of love that. And it's something I wouldn't mind maybe getting into, but to see TV shows 24 hours a day with cooking ideas and cooking shows from all over the world. I like that. I do watch them. I'm not a fan of recipes. I was raised, like I said, with my grandfather and my dad, and even my mom were creators. So I don't use a lot of recipes, but I am inspired by recipes. I watch shows to get inspired and get ideas, but I don't steal them. It would be like an artist painting by numbers someone else's art. You get inspired by what you see or hear or taste, and then you bring it to your own. You bring it in and make it your own. And that's what I like to do. So I'm inspired by the love of the media, how it's taken food and restaurants and the whole idea of dining. And I'm inspired by that. That's basically it. But there isn't one person. I mean, I have a few of my chefs that I like, but there's not one person that I really say I'm inspired by. It comes a lot from my own imagination and my heart.
Right on. Very good. Very good. Over your obviously well-established, lengthy career, what would you say has been your greatest creation? Something that Chef Gary made that is yours, and I mean truly up there.
Wow, I have so many. It sounds weird to say that, but oh my gosh, it's tough.
You can even go top three. Top three, I'll give you.
Top three. Okay, here's one that's very simple. I get a lot of comments on, and it was an idea I had. I didn't go through my history, but I had the great opportunity of becoming a chef on board private jets back in the year 2000. And I had the chance to travel around the world cooking for some very wealthy people on their own private jets. And I've been around the globe 5 times. I just loved that job. It was great. Well, one time I was in Shanghai. We went to this very elegant restaurant, and on the menu they had a 15 ingredient soup. It was a cold, rainy day that day, so I ordered this soup. About 10 minutes later, a server came out and put this big copper bowl in front of me. And inside was like 2 little pieces of pork, nothing else. And I'm thinking, what did I order? I no sooner thought that, and to my left came another server with this beautiful big copper tureen. And in they poured this hot, brothy soup with all these vegetables and chicken and shrimp and everything was in it. I thought it was a great presentation. I also thought that if that first server had to carry that broth bowl all the way from the kitchen up and downstairs, she never would have made it. So I kind of had that idea that I've never seen that in the United States. So I adopted an appetizer called a brodo. Brodo is Italian for broth. I just thought it needed to be called a broth soup. And I have it on my menu at all times, and it changes every day. What it is a broth. I make a chicken broth, beef, seafood, or vegetable broth. And the bowl comes out with the wild rice, grilled chicken, fresh vegetables, herbs, whatever I want to use for that day, warmed in a bowl, sat in front of the customer, and then a pitcher of the broth is poured afterwards. It's a great presentation. It's an easy way to bring that broth soup out to the table. And you can also see that it is all fresh vegetables and meat in the bowl. But the number one reason I do it, when you make a soup at home, when someone's making a soup or stew, you're combining all those flavors into a pot and cooking it, of course. So eventually it is all one flavor. To me, this broth soup that I make has a unique taste to it, because the vegetables, the fresh spinach, whatever it would be that you have in that broth is unique in its own flavor. So as you spoon out a spoon of the broth with the chicken and spinach, that's going to taste different than the second spoonful, which is going to have wild rice and carrot. So I like the idea that a soup is going to have a little bit of a more complex taste to it, rather than sitting in the back. It's all made to order. Nothing is made ahead of time, except for the broth. The broth is ready to go, but everything else is made to order. So, and also if someone says, oh, it sounds great, but I don't like onion, we eliminate the onion because it's made to order. So there's a lot of different aspects on that. So that's one item that I always have on my menu that people find very unique and different. Two more I have to come up with, huh?
No. That one was rock solid. And actually, again, harkening back to our recent visit, there was I want to say oyster stew that you made in that similar style. It was brought tableside and prepared, correct?
That's correct. Right, that's correct. When I was a child, there was a restaurant in Bucks County known for its oyster stew, and it was delicious. That was a memory I couldn't find. I've gone to many restaurants and had an oyster stew, and I was disappointed, maybe. But I could not find that restaurant. It had since closed, but I used my memory of what I saw. And I'm talking, I might have been 15 when I had that.
Mm. Wow. I mean, it certainly presented extremely well.
Use my memory. Thank you. Also, another one is my Caesar salad dressing. I worked in an Italian restaurant that I started at. They used to make a lot of the food tableside, which I might do here one day. You made a Caesar salad tableside in a large wooden bowl, and I was taught how to make this delicious Caesar salad from the original ingredients. I love that taste. And again, many restaurants, you couldn't find that. A lot of restaurants call it a Caesar, but to me, it's more like a creamy Italian. You need to taste the garlic, the anchovy, the lemon, the Parmesan. You need to have every flavor jump out at you. So it needs to be made to order. So I do that here at the restaurant. I make it daily. I don't make it for every person, but each day I make the Caesar salad fresh, and it's applied to the salad, and it's strong. It's really a garlicky, cheesy, anchovy, lemony type of taste. But again, that was from a childhood memory that I recreated.
Very nice, very nice. In food today, Gary, what trend? There's a lot of tradition. There's a lot of childhood that comes out on your menu. Currently, what trend, or I'll say unfortunately popular idea, thing, or concept are you ready to see go away? Like, what's popular in food right now that, in your opinion, really shouldn't be?
I believe in giving a portion size. I think there was a while where we had this nouveau cooking where there were small portions at a higher price usually, and I think there are some restaurants that still do that. I believe that if you go to a restaurant, you want to be full. You want to be satisfied. And some people go the opposite, and it's giant. But I think there are still some restaurants that do a 5-ounce piece of tuna with 3 or 4 pieces of carrot, and that's your entree. I try to make my entrees filling. I do the maximum amount of protein that I can give you without, overstuffing you. So I think there needs to go back to the plates that seem to fulfill you, and maybe say, that's it, I've had enough of food, rather than dine on it and then maybe have to stop somewhere on the way home to get something to eat, because I know some people have done that. That's one thing I hope goes away. You need to go back to that comfort and give enough of your entree. I don't think there's anything that needs to go away as far as trends. I think there should be options for everyone. I think that's the key, is having an option available, and that's one of the reasons I opened this restaurant. But I think there are tastes for every kind of food, so I think there should be a lot of choices out there. So I'm not really I can't think of anything that shouldn't go. I'm not a big fan of fried foods, even though I do myself like a good French fry once in a while. So you won't see a lot of fried foods on my menu, because there are a lot of fried foods in the area, a lot of choices for that. I don't like a lot of frozen foods. I have the smallest freezer in all of Bloomsburg too. I can get deliveries 3 times a week. I don't need a giant walk-in freezer. So
awesome. So again, going back to seasons, going back to the restaurant, are you happy with what you're doing right now?
Oh my gosh, yes. I am.
Good.
I am so happy. It's a dream I've always had. I knew it would happen one day. There were a few times in my life where it might have been an opportunity. I might have done it. Didn't feel right. It wasn't right in my heart. Might not have been the right location. And this just came quickly, and it felt right. And I am so happy I did it. I am extremely happy. I think it is Confucius that says, if you find a job that you love doing, you'll never work another day in your life.
That's correct.
That's how I feel. I live right here in town. I could walk to work. I love it. I actually could skip to work. I'm so happy, but it wouldn't look very good in a college town. But I love what I'm, and I think it's quite obvious to most every customer that walks through my door that I love what I'm doing. Yeah, it's awesome. It's a dream come true for me.
Awesome. All right, last section. This is going to be a bit of the weird, a bit of the oddball, the after sections of questions. So these are going to be a little off the wall, a little bit kind of out of the box, but just roll with me. Trust me. I won't steer you too far off the path, if you will. So I'm standing in your kitchen, professionally or at home, you pick. What music or what sounds do I hear in that kitchen?
Sean, you hit another very passionate thing in my life. I love music. I always have. I do not play an instrument at all. I don't know why. I should have, but I love music. That is a big part of dining. Again, it's something that if you go to a beautiful restaurant, great food, but if you sit down to no music, something's missing to me. Or if you sit down to a radio station on extremely loud, or with commercials and so on. Or let's say it's the type of music that doesn't fit the restaurant. You're in this elegant tablecloth restaurant and you have like country western or bluegrass. It might not fit. To me, the music has to fit the mood that you're trying to portray. And that is a big, important part. Now, in the dining room, I have music that I think fits the elegance that I want without feeling really stuffy. I don't want classical. I love classical music, but it would feel like I'd need to wear a tie. I wanted the music to feel comfortable and recognizable. So I handpick my music. It's all on an MP3 player. And I get a lot of great comments about it. So that is for the dining room. Now in the kitchen, I allow my sous chefs and my staff in the kitchen to choose what they'd like to hear. I want them to be comfortable, but it can't be really loud, so it comes out in the dining room. So, but myself, I love all kinds of music. Very varied. So I listen to it all myself. In fact, at night when I close the restaurant, I'm here alone sometimes. I change the music to something a little more modern or something, and it really feels good. It kind of is something I enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
But
cool.
Did that answer your question? Do you want to know what kind of music or?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, there is one artist in the dining room that I get comments on, and I wish I could meet the woman. Her name is Beegie Adair, Beegie Adair, Adair. I found her by accident once. It had to be like 10 years ago. And I was listening to a radio station, and I heard this piano, and it was just the right sound for me. And I've kept her CDs, and she's probably 80 years old. She used to play backup for artists for 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. As old as she was always playing, piano. And she has about 20 albums out, and she has a jazz trio. To me, that is the perfect music, and I'd say 85 to 90% of my music in the restaurant is hers. I just love that. It's perfect for the restaurant. Now, I purchased the music and put it in the restaurant, and I give her name out all the time because a lot of people comment on it.
Yeah. You heard it here, Beegie Adair. Awesome.
Beegie Adair. Yep.
All right, cool. Hey, you're going to be stranded on a deserted island, completely unrelated. I told you this was going off the rails a little bit. Stranded on a deserted island, and you're only allowed to take 3 foods or food items with you. What would they be?
I would think it would have to be something that you could plant and live off of. So I would say garlic. I love garlic. If I could take a garlic plant somewhere and, again, add garlic and bacon to anything, it's going to taste better. So if I'm on an island and I find something I'm not going to want to eat, whether it be a rat or something, maybe a little garlic would help. So it would definitely be garlic. I think salt is important. I don't use a lot of salt in my cooking, but I think as salt goes, it's something that you need. So I would definitely have some salt with me. The third item, I would have to say, that's a fishing rod would be great, but a food. Let me see. I don't know, the biggest pizza I could find. I love pizza.
Pizza, right? Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what. That would be something I would crave. Or, you get cravings. I know I do every once in a while. You crave certain things. You don't get them, and your mind kind of subconsciously says, "Oh, I need that." And pizza is one. Some good Asian food, Thai food, spicy foods are one for me. Once in a while, I need a good spice. So I'd have to say a giant pizza.
Giant pizza. I love it.
You thought I was going to say like scallops or salmon or something fancy, right?
Honestly, I've gotten like caviar, champagne cheese, bread, cheese, wine. I've gotten the French responses, and this is definitely the most like practical. Like, yes, you could literally cook anything and make it at least taste a little better with the garlic and the salt. And the pizza is just because pizza is awesome. So
yeah,
definitely works. What is, if there is one, if there is one, what is the food or dish that still, I don't want to say scares, but maybe intimidates you, whether it's to make or to eat? Like, is there a dish that still like kind of trips you out a little bit?
That's a good question. I don't know of any offhand. I couldn't think of anything. I think right away I thought of like octopus. I have a wonderful calamari that goes on my menu once in a while I love. And I'm thinking of unusual seafood that people would probably look strange at, and trying to make scungili and octopus. I've had wonderful restaurants, and I think something like that would probably be a challenge to make something that most people would turn their nose up to and try to make it enjoyable. Probably with garlic and salt, but I mean, that's something that I think I worry about, is trying to introduce something that might be a little bit out there. So that's something but I like that. I like, to me, owning a restaurant is kind of an education to each guest that comes through the door. You may want to educate them in something they might not have tried before. So I like doing that. And it's a crap shop because they might not like it. But I'd like to try to introduce them to something new. So like Brussels sprouts we were talking about.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
While not new, they were new to me that night. So absolutely. What would be, I'm not sure, Gary, have you read any of Melanie Denea's work?
I don't think so, no.
My Last Supper and the next course, I forget the name of the second volume, but basically it's two books with 50 famous chefs. And the question posed to them. Yes. I do know that. So we have both volumes, and my wife and I can literally sit up, drink wine, and just read these nonstop. So my question to you, what would be your ideal Last Supper along the lines of Denea's framework? Who would be there? What would be served? Who would cook it? What would it be?
That's very simple. I've thought of this many times, and I wish there was a way it could happen. My grandfather and my dad have both passed. My dad passed last year recently. Were very big inspirations in why I'm here. And I never got a chance to show them this restaurant. My dad passed just 2 months prior to me opening. I never had a chance to thank him for inspiring me to be in this business. So it would be my dad and my grandfather at a table, a bottle of Opus One of my favorite wines, a Caesar salad made tableside by Roberto, who was the maitre d' at this restaurant I worked at, who made the best, and probably just a good steak. I love an excellent steak with a little béarnaise sauce, some fresh asparagus, and probably a creme brulee for dessert, and a little shot of Grand Marnier, and a snifter, and I'd be in heaven. That would be great.
Excellent. Excellent. And finally, Chef, what I close every episode with, what is food to you in a single word?
Passion. I am passionate about it. I love it. I can't think about anything but the creative part of food. Passion is in my heart. That's it.
Phenomenal. And certainly, again, I've dropped the name a couple times, but Seasons on Main, Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. If you want to see passion come across on a plate and in service, just overall, that's where it's at. So, well, Chef, we're out of time, out of questions. So, I mean, either way would be done. But I'd like to thank you so very, very much for being on today. Is there anything I can help you plug? Anything that you want to toss out?
No, you've done very well. I hope a lot of people get to see this and do stop in. I personally guarantee I'll meet with you. I go to every table when you come into the restaurant. So please mention if you do come in that you did see this, and I'd be glad to chat with you some more. But no, thank you. I'm honored that you asked me to do this.
And I'm honored to have had you on as a guest, sir. Seasons on Main, Chef Gary Vadakin, 570-336-2790. Again, thank you. Thank you so much. My producer today has been Johnny Lemoria Robinson. This has been the Coarse Grind Podcast, episode 4. Tune in next time, and we should have more questions, more food, more love, and more art. Thank you so much for listening.
Like